Hi everyone, it's Maria, your Midnight Baker. Welcome back to my channel for another tutorial. Today's video is a sewing tutorial for a fabric N95 mask cover. Most people are probably aware that there is a worldwide shortage of protective masks for our healthcare workers right now, and my local hospital put out a plea asking for volunteers to make some fabric ones. Now, I've seen lots of videos in the past couple days for rectangular face masks, but the information that the hospital sent me was actually a pattern and directions for these round ones, specifically designed to cover the N95 masks. I started making a couple and immediately got questions from friends on Instagram on how to make these. So if you're interested in learning how to make a fabric N95 mask cover, keep watching. So this pattern was provided to me via email, and I'll put the PDF in the description below. One tip: print it out using the shrink to size feature instead of the usual 100% scale that most PDF patterns use. It took me a couple tries to figure that out, and to double check, make sure that your printout measures 5 inches and 8 inches as shown in the pattern. I went the extra step and traced it onto a clear piece of plastic that I had. This was actually a cover for a small journal. So you'll need fabric that is 100% cotton and is tightly woven. I had this light gray solid in my fabric stash, and I decided to keep these masks really simple and basic so it can be used by both men and women. I had exactly a yard, which was perfect since I folded it into fourths, and made sure that I could cut out my pattern with some extra space but not too much waste. So here you can see I'm using my rotary cutter on my cutting mat, and I cut 4 layers at a time, and that's what you'll need for one mask. Now you'll want to keep your fabric in pairs and mark the notches and the dots. I'm using just a regular pencil, which will wash out later. These notches are going to help you line up your center seam, and the dots show where you attach the elastic. Now the pattern said to use 9.5-inch long pieces of elastic, and I'm using a 1/4 inch wide here. But after I made a bunch, I realized it was a bit too long, so I started shortening my elastic to 8.5 inches. You're going to clip it between the layers of the fabric at the marked spots, making sure that it's flat and not twisted. Quick side note, I am using a fabric that is solid, which means it's reversible and both sides are the same. But if you're using a printed fabric, you'll want to make sure that the pattern side that you want to show in the finished mask is facing inward to the elastic in this step. So just do this for both pairs, and then we're going to head over to the sewing machine. All right, so my machine right now is set up for a 1/4 inch seam allowance, which I do by moving my needle position. If that doesn't make any sense, just let me know. And you also see me using a jumper scrap, and that's because my machine likes to suck the fabric down at the beginning. But you're just gonna sew along the edge and remove the clips as you go, making sure you hold the elastic in place with your finger. So sorry that the lighting isn't very good. It was late at night, and I was trying to just make sure that it was in focus so you could see the actual stitching. Okay, so once you have both of those done, you're just gonna flip them out and flatten the edge. I'm just rolling it between my fingers, but you can also run a nail along the inside edge to push that seam all the way out and make it really flat. Once you've got them pretty flat, just go ahead and lay the 2 halves together. And if you need, you can check that those marked notches are lined up, but mine lined up pretty perfectly. And I'm just gonna go ahead and clip the middle and the end because I hold the beginning edges with my fingers when I sew, so I don't like to put a clip there. Now for this part, you're gonna want a wider seam allowance. The pattern says to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance for regular masks and a 5/8 inch seam allowance for smaller ones. I again will do this by just moving my needle to the leftmost position, and I let the edge of the fabric stick out a little bit from the edge of my sewing foot. And again, if this doesn't make much sense, just let me know. But the most important thing here is for this seam, be sure that you backstitch at the beginning and at the end. I forgot at the beginning, and I had to go back and secure that. So once that center seam is done, now we need to sew down the extra fabric to one side. So this next step is optional. These are pinking shears and they cut that zigzag at the edge, which helps the fabric not fray. But again, that's just totally optional. So now you're going to sew the fabric down to one side, and this is probably the trickiest part of the entire process. It's a curve, you're sewing through a lot of layers of fabric, and there's that excess fabric in the seam. So what I do, and I'm sorry that my hands are blocking your view here, but you want to just go slow and hold the fabric down to allow the extra to fold into like a little pleat, and the machine will sew that down. And if you do about 3 or 4 of these, about an inch or so apart as you travel down, it's going to go ahead and eat up that extra fabric in the curve so that at the end it lines up. Now once you get to the end, stop before you get to the edge, leave your needle in the down position and pivot. And now you're going to sew all the way around the edge, called top stitching. This makes sure that everything stays in place, and as you can see, it gives you a chance to also backstitch in the spots where the elastic is, and that will really just secure that and make sure that those won't pop out. So you're just going to keep sewing around the edge, and you're going to just be careful when you pass that center seam since it will be very thick there. I used the stiletto and kind of pulled it through on the back, and that helps. When you get around back to where you started, sew over the area where you began, backstitch to secure, cut your threads, and snip off any extras. And there you have it, a finished N95 mask fabric cover. Download the PDF from the description if you would like to make it, and if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay safe. Bye.